It is clear that we're being asked to approve something that relies on policies and systems that we do not yet exist. The proposal depends on reduced parking, off-site parking, and expanded use of cash-in-lieu. Yet the town still does not have a completed parking strategy, a defined enforceable cash-in-lieu framework. I raised this issue from this podium 8 months ago, and those tools are still not in place. That is not proper planning. Even within the proposal itself, the numbers do not line up. Public Works supported 20 spaces for cash-in-lieu, while the bylaw allows for 25. If the analysis supported 20, why are we allowing more? At the same time, the cost per space is not clearly defined, which means we are being asked to rely on a system that is not fully established or consistently applied. Cash-in-lieu is not a solution, it's a tool, and it only works when it's tied to a real deliverable plan. Without that, we are not solving a problem. We are shifting it into our streets, onto our businesses, and onto our already limited parking supply. I have long advocated for more downtown parking to support economic growth, and I've been consistently told that parking is too expensive and the taxpayers should not pay for it. Yet here, we're doing exactly that in reverse. Taxpayers are paying and the private developer benefits. The downtown businesses lose. That's not fair to taxpayers or to the businesses that are left to deal with the consequences. We are being told by the developer that parking has improved, but it is critical to understand how. Parking demand was not solved, it was shifted onto municipal lots and reduced by eliminating the community hub. That community feature was not minor. It was a defining part of the original proposal, sold to the public and relied on through the OLT process. The community hub wasn't removed because it lacked value. It was removed to make the numbers work. Once again, the community and the taxpayers lose while the private developer benefits. At the same time, this is not a minor revision. This project now sits on a larger assembled site, spans additional properties, and has significantly greater footprint. The massing and the material difference, and even in the applicant's own visual impact assessment, and comments from the Niagara Escarpment Commission raise concern about the impact on the escarpment and the surrounding views. This is not the same project that was presented to the public or approved by the OLT. What is being presented as a solution in reality is a series of trade-offs: increased reliance on cash-in-lieu without a clear structure, added pressure on public parking, and the loss of a promised community benefit. The burden is being shifted onto the community and the downtown businesses. We should not be going to the Niagara Escarpment Commission to make a proposal like this fit. We should be working with them to define the rules first, so a development respects the escarpment, not pushes up against it. This is not a refinement. This is a material change. This project is materially different and must be treated as a new proposal with proper public input. But there's an even bigger issue moving alongside this development, and that's the official draft plan, or draft official plan. The community should be deeply concerned the direction of this plan could set and how it permanently could change Grimsby's identity. If approved as drafted, our escarpment could disappear behind towers, fundamentally changing how this town is experienced for generations to come. Downtown Grimsby is defined by its relationship with the Niagara Escarpment. We are not just near it, we are nestled into it. The escarpment is not a backdrop, it's a defining feature of Grimsby, and it belongs to everyone, and it needs to be protected. There may have been public consultation on the official plan, but there appears to be a significant disconnect between what the public believed was being discussed and what is actually being permitted. I do not believe most residents understood that this plan could allow 12-story buildings along the base of the escarpment. And now both this development and this proposal and the official plan are moving forward side by side with significant urgency. I think it's fair for the public to ask why. The town places significant importance on protecting individual heritage buildings, designating them, regulating them, and preserving them. And yet there's no comparable framework to protect the broader escarpment landscape that defines Grimsby. There are no clear policies for how we build at the base of the escarpment, no defined view protections, no transition framework, and no established interface between development and the landscape. This is a fundamental gap. And once these buildings of this scale are constructed, there's no undo, there's no second review, no correction. This is a permanent decision. There's been a great deal of discussion about the Ontario Land Tribunal. The concerns that if council says no, the developer may go to the OLT and get something worse. But there's also a real risk in saying yes. Because this application does not exist in isolation, it sits alongside a draft official plan currently on the agenda for next month that would allow heights of up to 12 stories along the base of the escarpment. So the real question is not what happens if we say no. The real question is what happens if we say yes and then approve the official draft plan next month. Because if both happens, this does not remain a 7-story project. It immediately moves into a planning framework that allows 12 stories or more. And the need to go to the OLT largely disappears because the permissions are already in place. That is the reality of what is in front of you. So I ask you, Mr. Mayor, and the members of council, is that the direction your constituents actually want? Do they want to see 12-story buildings along the base of the escarpment and the long-term impact that comes along with that? Because this decision is not just about one application. This is about setting the direction for the future of this town. I've heard this developer describe himself as a city builder and point to places like Collingwood as an example of his vision. But I think council needs to pause and ask if that's the direction this community actually wants. In my experience, residents are not asking for Grimsby to become a city. They are asking for growth, but growth that respects our scale, our character, and what makes this town unique. If this project is approved with reduced parking, expanded cash-in-lieu, and unresolved visual impacts, it becomes the model for what follows under a far more permissive official plan. That's how communities lose their identity, not all at once, but incrementally. And once that direction is set, it becomes very difficult to reverse. That is why the timing of these decisions matter. This revised proposal only came to light weeks ago, at least to the public, yet it's being pushed forward quickly. At the same time, the draft official plan, one that would fundamentally change what is permitted on the Woolverton and the surrounding properties, is moving forward just as quickly. And I think it's fair for the public to ask why there's so much urgency to move both of these forward at the same time. I understand there are timelines, but timelines do not justify incomplete decisions. If the proper framework is not yet in place, then taking more time is not a delay, it's a responsibility. There is a responsible path forward, and it's available right now. The committee can act tonight by putting forward a recommendation directing staff to examine and consider implementing an interim control bylaw under Section 38 of the Planning Act. That authority exists for exactly this type of situation, where decisions are being requested before proper framework is in place. In this case, that includes municipal parking strategy, a clear cash-in-lieu framework, and clear rules for how we build at the base of the escarpment. This should be developed together with the Niagara Escarpment Commission and within the Niagara Escarpment Plan, where protections are clearer and far more enforceable. An interim control bylaw does not stop development. It simply pauses it so that when development does proceed, it's guided by the right rules and a full understanding of the long-term impact. It is also important to understand that the Ontario Land Tribunal typically gives weight to these municipalities that are actively undertaking this kind of planning work. This is a measured, defensible step that allows council to get it right, because ultimately, this is what is at stake. If council approves this development, you will be turning a shared public landscape into a private commodity where the best escarpment views are no longer experienced by the community. They are sold floor by floor from private units. This is not just another development application. This is a decision about Grimsby's future, about our heritage, about what we're willing to give away. So what I would ask council to take the pressure off, take the time and get this right. Please seriously consider directing staff to examine an intern control bylaw under Section 38 of the Planning Act, so proper framework can be put in place before irreversible decisions are made. Because if we don't, we're not just approving a building, we are changing Grimsby permanently. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Are there any questions from committee? All right, our next delegation is Michelle Seaburn. Michelle, please come to the podium.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to make some comments regarding the proposed Woolverton project. Not as a regional councillor, I'm here as a concerned resident. And Kevin, you're a hard act to follow. The development has undergone several changes since it first was introduced. I understand that the developer has reduced the height of the building and consequently the number of units. However, significant amendments remain, including the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendments, the increased lot coverage, reduced setbacks, and concerning resident parking ratio, narrower parking spaces, and virtually no parking for visitors or customers at any of the retail outlets. While a number of amendments itself is concerning, parking remains by far my greatest concern. During my time on municipal council as a member of the planning committee, parking was consistently one of the most significant concerns raised by residents, businesses, and developers. It was an issue we took seriously because parking impacts not just the development itself, but the surrounding neighborhood and business community. Less than one parking space per residential unit is troubling. Most family households require 2 working adults, and unless they both work within walking distance of their home or have access to regular transit, many families require more than 1 vehicle. There is virtually no visitor parking proposed, and if retail is included within this development, there appears to be little or no on-site parking available for customers. I understand there is an expectation of underutilized parking spaces in the surrounding area, and they may be available during the off hours. However, residents with additional vehicles will inevitably seek parking elsewhere, potentially displacing parking needed by nearby businesses and their customers. That is not fair to local businesses, and it's not fair to the surrounding residents who will be left to deal with consequences of inadequate parking. This is not an ideal situation, and it only gets worse if it becomes the accepted norm. Cash-in-lieu parking does not solve the problem. The suggested 25 spaces could still be occupied by residents of this development. I would also like to note that we are expected to lose approximately 25 roadside parking spaces when the new Grimsby Reimagined project is completed next year. To my knowledge, the parking study has not yet been finalized, but I would suggest that it demonstrates that convenient parking is already limited during certain times. I'm not requesting action for this committee. My purpose is simply to emphasize that leadership must be shown to ensure that these concerns are addressed before the development proceeds. Poor planning does not hurt developers, it hurts your community. Please take the time to consider a long-term impact for this proposal carefully. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Michelle. Any questions from committee? No. Up next, we have Harley Valentine. Harley, please come up to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the Planning Development Committee for this opportunity, members of the public. My name is Harley Valentine. I'm a partner at Castle Point Numa. I am a city builder. I was also born and raised in Grimsby and have a lot of heart for this town and for this project. And I'm going to do my very best to speak from the heart as I look to create a thoughtful response of what we heard tonight. And I want to thank all of the delegates for their contribution. It's a reflection of the passion and the love that we have for downtown Grimsby. I think downtown Grimsby is one of our strongest neighborhoods. I think the soul of this community lives in a large part downtown Grimsby. My grandmother had a shop downtown Grimsby, a dress shop, when Kevin's father originally ran Harmony Jewelry, so this goes back generations. And I am actually mission driven because my grandmother later in life suffered dementia, and she had to struggle finding a place to live close to downtown Grimsby and having that access and that walkability and being able to hold on to that lifestyle. And that's where a lot of my work comes from in the town, and that's where I'm driven. So again, I'm going to try to put the heart aside and speak more about the nuts and bolts and the practicality of this project. This is a project that's unlike Grimsby has ever seen before. This is an apartment building. I'm going to make an assumption and say 95% in the audience today own their homes. That's an incredible gift. That's an opportunity that's built over time. And as we know, we're suffering from cost of living and we're in an affordability crisis. For those who are forward-looking or wish to actually look at, let's say, a 12-year wait list that currently exists at the Robin Hood Apartments, the wait lines at the food bank, at the GBF, or the region's feeble attempts to deliver 5 to 6 units of affordable housing at the base of Kidd Avenue in Livingston. This project has 15 affordable units. That doesn't require any outside funding. That's going to be driven from our project, from our revenue, and through our ambitions to deliver not just an apartment building, but a purpose-built rental. What is a purpose-built rental? Purpose-built rental does not exist. When we think of apartments today in Grimsby, we think of Slessor Apartments, and Slessor Apartments was a purpose-built rental version 50 years ago. Today, they're highly amenitized. They tend to have larger suites. They're geared for those looking to downsize, rather looking to free themselves from the efforts of maintaining a home as you get older, but also for young families looking to save up and have their start in home ownership. I hope this audience today and this council has that in consideration as we create in this town what is hopefully more rings on the ladder as far as housing opportunities. We all, let's make an assumption, own homes. Our children, are they able to live and own homes in this community? I think a lot of people would struggle to say that they have that, but what are other opportunities for them to live here? What about well-appointed apartments or purpose-built rentals? That's what we're delivering. So let's be very clear, this is an apartment building, and as an apartment building, as the owner of that apartment building, we will be vetting tenants and making sure that those tenants are appropriate for our building and also what their vehicle requirements are. So that's another check and balance to be considered as we move forward. A lot of change, and we talk about change, and I spoke about this many months ago. Change is I see it as a negative word, like things are going to change back. We are on a trajectory that all of us are a little uncomfortable by, a trajectory called growth. And guess what? That growth is going to manifest itself into its final apex with the arrival of the GO train. That is happening. Unless we don't want the train to stop here, then we should probably forget the interim control bylaw. Let's write a letter to Premier Doug Ford today and the Minister of Transportation, say, forget the train. It's going to create too much change. And you know what? That $500 million that you spent on a high school, on a hospital, $7.9 million for downtown infrastructure, $16.7 million for this community center. Thanks, but you know what? We want to keep the population at 30,000, and that investment's around $60,000 per resident. We think that's appropriate. I don't think that's appropriate. I think we have a lot to offer, and I think we need to think about how we roll out a carpet to welcome new residents and families to this community. Because as I look out on this audience and I hear about what the leadership looks like moving forward, we are so much about protectionism. And as we said, as our great Prime Minister said, nostalgia is not a strategy. So let's buckle up and let's work together, because what I feel we have developed working with staff very closely and the NEC, and just to respond to Kevin's remark, we have worked very closely with the Niagara Escarpment Commission. We have iterated the plan several times, and today, as Alison underscored, there's no more further outstanding comments. We have the clear and free, and if anybody wants to pick up the phone and call the NEC, we got thumbs up. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of this work. And what I hope in the new official plan will be commemorated is potentially more developments like this. Not 12 stories, Kevin, and I agree with you. That is not appropriate. I think 7 stories is appropriate as long as it sits off of Main Street, in the shadow of Main Street, and continues to feed it with new homes and new economic opportunity so that we can continue to grow downtown Grimsby. And to Kevin's point, and I have a lot of respect for Kevin, sorry, he's invested into this town. And you know what? It takes investment to maintain its character. If we do not invest, it will erode and it will fall apart. There's a lot of other shopkeepers that knew my grandmother that are still around, and they're holding on by the skin of their teeth. They're not going to make it, and that's character we're going to lose. But let me tell you, if we had 150 units, of which 15 would be affordable, they could still be there and still be thriving. So that is my mission. That is what drives me. And that's what we're building for. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Harley.